All right. Dr. Tideman received his PhD in economics from the University of Chicago, where he even studied under people like Milton Friedman. In 1975, he collaborated with Nobel laureate James Buchanan in writing the study Gold, Money, and the Law, the Limits of Governmental Monetary Authority, which goes into the status of gold in the 30s and then the big change under Nixon in the 70s. And I browsed a little bit and it's very interesting. And even Milton Friedman also gives some evaluation there in that book. And it's not hard to get because it was republished in 2017. So it must still have good contemporary value. Anyway, Professor Tideman has been professor of economics at Virginia Tech since 1985. And today he will continue his, and this is the title, The Evaluation of Monetary Systems. Professor Tideman, thank you again for joining us. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Okay. I've attended all or nearly all of the AMI conferences from the very beginning. And yet I'm not an expert in monetary theory. It's always been an interest of mine, but it's a kind of side interest. My main interests have been voting theory, public finance, and theories of economic justice. But in any case, I have thought a lot about monetary systems, and I thought I would talk about the general question of how one evaluates monetary systems today. And as I was preparing my remarks, I realized that while I wanted to talk about monetary systems, it's essential that I say something about banking systems as well, because the way monetary systems work depends a lot on what banking system they're associated with. And it seems to me that there are three principal kinds of banking systems what one might consider. There's free banking, where anybody can open a bank and operate it under whatever rules he wants, like we had pretty much in the United States in the middle of the 19th century. There's regulated fractional reserve banking, which is what we had most of the time other than in the time of free banking. And then there's 100% reserve banking where bankers are never allowed to lend deposits, which is the goal of a lot of us as a third banking system. And which banking system you had would affect your evaluation of a monetary system. And I have to acknowledge that I haven't thought this through, but I'm going to see what happens if we assume that we have the banking system we want. That is a banking system with no lending of deposits while we evaluate monetary systems. Okay, so first I want to talk about criteria for evaluating monetary systems. And the first criterion is efficiency. What I mean by efficiency is how well can the monetary system guarantee that people will get what they want when they contract for money in the future. So it's, you might say, kind of bounded stability as opposed to catastrophic stability. So I think I'll leave efficiency there and go on to fairness. What I consider to be a fair monetary system is one that treats people equally and allows for a reasonable equality of the benefits of a monetary system. And then there is the criteria that I call stability, which is the ability of a monetary system to resist huge changes that cause either rapid inflation or severe unemployment. It seems to me that these are the three criteria by which you might want to evaluate monetary systems. Now, there are any number of monetary systems, but I've settled on a few to consider. And the first is the old traditional one, the gold standard. The gold standard is a system under which money is defined as being always exchangeable for a specified amount of gold. And I assume that there would be, if we had a stable gold standard system, it might have 100% reserves of gold. If you have fractional reserves of gold, then you're subject to instability with runs on gold. On the other hand, if you insist on 100% reserves under a gold standard, then you're going to have rapid deflation as economic progress increases, unless you have corresponding increases in the amount of gold in the system. So it's a bit of a puzzle as to exactly what one means by a gold standard. I suppose the most traditional definition is one in which there's the issues of currency are expected to have only a fractional reserve for the money that they issue. Now, one of the competitors for the gold standard is the system that I think was first popularized by Irving Fisher, a market basket instead of gold as what gold is redeemable for. So you take some collection of goods that represents the economy as whole and say that a person who wants to turn their money in is allowed to receive this market basket of goods in exchange for the money. The market basket becomes so much tin, so much steel, so much wheat, so much rice becomes the thing corresponding to an ounce of gold that would define the money system, the value of money. There's a related system that I know only a little bit about that one might want to consider, and that's what I believe is called the commodity exchange system, where instead of delivering the market basket, you deliver enough gold to buy the market basket. I have felt that that system is subject to a kind of instability from the jumps in prices as the observed market prices of the goods in the basket change. Although I know there are people who think that the commodity exchange system is the right way to go. So I'll just note that it's there, but I'm not planning to discuss it further today. Then there's the brick standard. The idea of having a unit of money defined by bricks was first mentioned by some professor whose name I don't remember at the University of Chicago, who's quoted in a paper by Milton Friedman in about 1951. And Friedman says that the only problem with bricks is that nobody can take it seriously. And I think that there's evidence for that, because when I first presented the idea of a brick standard at the American Monetary Institute, everybody assumed I was joking. But if you ask what combination of goods follows the consumer price index best, the answer is, when I looked into it, the answer I got was something that was 80% cement. And then when I saw it was 80% cement, I said, well, why not just go with bricks, which is rather like cement. You bake some clay or you bake some dry materials and you get a solid object. So I checked it out, and bricks do track the price level very well. It seemed to me that a brick standard probably dominates a market basket because you can easily enough deliver bricks if you want to. So if you, and it's not nearly as dangerous to have a fractional reserve in bricks as it is with gold, because it's so easy to make more bricks. You just go to the brick factory and work overtime, and you could deliver not too long as many bricks as people want. If they insist that they don't want money, they want bricks, but they're not going to want that many bricks because you only want bricks if you want to build something. Bricks aren't very usefully stored under your mattress as a source of value. So I think a brick standard is probably the best you can do if you want a commodity, but that's getting ahead. I'm here just trying to define these things. Then I would call our current system a managed fiat system. Money isn't guaranteed to be worth anything. We have the government increase and decrease the money supply in order to achieve as much economic stability as they can. Next, we have a foreign peg. That's not particularly relevant for the United States, but there are countries that say, what we will do is we will define our currency as being worth so many dollars or so many pounds or whatever other currency they may define their currency in terms of. And they get whatever virtues the foreign currency has. They might at least persuade their own citizens or people who might have occasion to use the currency that they're not going to inflate. They're going to abide by the consequences of the value of the currency to which they are pegged. Then there's the American Monetary Institute plan. I would describe that as a plan under which money is brought into circulation by the government to fund government projects of one kind and another. And finally, I have shared seigniorage. That's a system that I came up with, under which money is created by interest-free loans to all citizens. And if a decrease in the money supply is required, people are required to pay back those interest-free loans. So that's a collection of monetary systems that one might want to evaluate. Next, we're going to evaluate them. So we have the criteria across the top and the monetary systems across down the left-hand column, and we're going to put some evaluations in. So these are kind of seat of the pants evaluations. You might want to do it more carefully than I've done it, but I'll show you my system. X means nope. A single wiggle means sort of, two wiggles means not too bad, and a check mark means yes, it satisfies it. So I would say that the gold standard is quite inefficient because in times like the 1870s, it leads to deflation. When a new gold mine is discovered, it leads to inflation. It's just, and people feel that the system can't deliver what is promised. You can have a run on gold and a depression resulting even without difficulties in the monetary system. There's an element of fairness in that a gold standard keeps the value of being able to issue money. Well, there's no profit if you have a 100% reserve standard. And if you have a fractional reserve of gold, the profit at least goes to the government. And to the extent that the government represents the people, that's not too bad, although I would rather have a system that gave the benefit of the monetary system to the people directly, rather than put it in the hands of the government for the government to do whatever it wanted to without the consent of the people. So then let's consider the market basket system. The market basket system overcomes a lot of the inefficiency of the gold standard because it doesn't rely on a substance that's supplied inelastically. But to the extent that you would have fractional reserves, you would still have the susceptibility to instability, in my opinion. To the extent that the government was the issuer of the market, of the currency, you would still have the issue of fairness. Then the BRIC standard. I think that the main advantage of I think the BRIC standard has even more efficiency and stability than the market basket because you have a higher correlation with the overall price level. But my system isn't quite sophisticated enough to capture that in the different symbols that I have. I think that the BRIC standard is possibly somewhat more efficient because as I think about it more, I think that the fairness of the BRIC standard is probably no better than the fairness of the market basket. If there is an improvement, it's probably in efficiency and stability because a BRIC standard is better able to track the price level, I believe, than a market basket system. Then we have managed fiat, the present system. I think that managed fiat is quite unfair. Now, when I put that X there, I guess that I was thinking of that primarily because of its connection with fractional reserve banking. If you had managed fiat with 100% reserve banking, its fairness would be probably no worse than the others in that the government would get the benefit. I think that we have done not too badly with a managed fiat system. We haven't had that much in the way of inflation. We've had some problems with stability. It's certainly a lot better than the gold standard. Then we have the foreign peg. Foreign peg has pretty much the same characteristics as the managed fiat system, except that countries that use a foreign peg are often seen to depart from the peg. And so to the extent that everybody recognizes that there is some risk of departure from the peg because of some domestic economic crisis, that they can't bear the cost of continuing to support the currency at the existing peg, the system loses some stability and efficiency compared to a domestically managed fiat. it might have an additional degree of uncertainty. I think that the limitation of the AMI system are two. One is that the AMI system seems to me to give an unfair advantage to people who have a special ability to get the government to fund what they want. I think that there's nothing wrong with having a large public sector, but I like the idea of having the size of the public sector determined by what it is that people are willing to finance. The idea of having money in the government's hands for whatever the government wants to spend it on without having to get the population to agree to sacrifice in order to get those things seems to me to be a undesirable compromise with fairness. With respect to stability, it's my guess that if there were some event that greatly reduced the demand for cash balances, if suddenly people became much better at using credit cards or other sources of credit, and there was a tendency for the system to generate inflation without any input from others, without any change from other sources, the AMI monetary system would have a hard time coming up with any way of comfortably reducing the money supply rapidly. So I think that it would be subject to incidents of inflation when there was a decrease in the demand for cash balances and difficulty in achieving a corresponding reduction in the quantity of money. The efficiency of the AMI system, I think, would probably be comparable to that of a managed fiat system. You'd have government officials who were in charge of increasing the money supply at the rate that would maintain price stability. I think that it's a limitation of the current system that we try to do it through interest rates, and interest rates are not that effective a way of managing the monetary system. So to the extent that the AMI system would operate directly through the quantity of money rather than through interest rates, it would have an advantage over the managed fiat system. So then we come to my favorite, the shared seigniorage system, where the money supply is increased by having the government make loans to all citizens. The loans would be ones you would be pretty much for a lifetime, and you'd have to pay them back at the end of your life. They would, in a startling departure from what one might expect, I suggest that the loans be larger for people with larger incomes. The loan would, as I conceive it, would represent a person's estimated demand for cash balances. So here's one way I think of it, that when you decide to keep an extra $1,000 in your pocket, you provide a benefit to the issuer of currency, and that's a kind of an externality, and you internalize that externality by saying to everybody, to the extent that we expect you to want a larger amount of cash balances handy, we're just going to lend you that much money interest-free. And if people sometime decide they need less money and try to spend it, we react by requiring everybody to pay back some of their cash balances so that we can avoid inflation. So I think that a system of shared seigniorage has a greater prospect of stability, both with respect to short-run fluctuations and with respect to huge increases or decreases in the demand for cash balances. And so I give it top marks all around. Okay, that's all I have to say. Now I'll take questions or hear your comments.
Thank you, Professor. It's very interesting indeed, but could you little further explain what is shared in your concept of shared seigniorage? Because somebody is saying, isn't the AMI also a shared seigniorage?
Yeah, yes, AMI is shared seigniorage where it all goes to the government, and the government shares it with the population by spending on programs. So the share you get under AMI depends on your ability to benefit from the programs that the government spends it on. So it's a different way of sharing. Yes, there is shared seigniorage in any system in which the government issues money. And I think that the AMI system is better than managed fiat we have because, as is often mentioned, the banks get a lot of the effective seigniorage under the system we have. If we had a managed fiat system with 100% reserve banking, we would have a system where the government got the seigniorage, it could spend it on whatever it wanted. I think that the primary difference I see between managed fiat and AMI is that AMI brings the Fed into the Treasury and arranges for a collection of things for the money to be spent on. Where the system we have says that the profit from the Fed goes into the Treasury and has no special designation as to how it's used. And if we had a managed fiat system of 100% reserve banking and therefore a more profit for the Fed, I think that the main difference with AMI would be that AMI specifies more carefully what's to be done with the money.
Although the AMI says also that that lot depends on Congress. If Congress says, okay, we're gonna put this into a big program to upgrade whatever, Wi-Fi for the whole population, they can do that. But it can also say, well, we're gonna lower taxes for everybody.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily on a program that
yes.
the AMI is
spending. AMI, where the money would be spent on lowering taxes, would be very close to my shared seigniorage program.
So would you accept AMI's Need Act if it had the clause seigniorage to be spent on the population in a direct way?
Yeah, or seniors to be spent by lowering taxes rather than by finding things to spend money on. I would still say that my shared seigniorage program has the virtue of allowing for a reduction in the money supply. I don't think the AMI program has a good option for lowering the money, reducing the money supply if that were to become necessary.
I hear you. Maybe one question more and then we'll move on. I have a question. Isn't there a quote unquote average productivity standard too? That is, the average productivity of the people whose name the money bears is what is congealed in and measured by the unit of account we call money. So this would be then a monetary system based on not a basket, but the whole of measured productivity, as I understand the question.
Yeah, well, I think that, okay, let me sort of go back historically. It seems to me that 100 years ago, from the quantity equation, there was a kind of implicit assumption that the velocity of money was pretty stable. And I think the velocity of money as rather variable. And so I think that if the velocity of money were quite stable, what you say would work. But with the velocity of money being subject to change, we need a system, in my view, that allows the quantity of money to change to accommodate the changing velocity of money.
I hear you. You are available for the panel later on
Yes,
for other questions.
yes,
Because this is, I think this is beautiful kind of way of you know, doing comparative research and finding out what might be best, you know, for humanity, and explain to others, you know, what might be best. Of course, you give yourself 9 points there.
yes. So I invite others to put their numbers in and explain why they think the numbers are what they think they are. I think this is a framework for conversation. It's not the final answer. Yes.
And some people also on the chat say, well, maybe you should have, you know, more criteria or define some of the criteria different, but that's a whole different.
Yes. Okay. So this is a framework for that conversation too.
Yes, absolutely. I hear you. I hear you. Professor Tideman, thank you so very much. Let's stay in contact so we can get people, you know, some of these slides so they can do their own homework. I will see you back again at the panel.
Right.
And I thank you very much.
If this video is helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe for new video notifications. Please consider donating at monetary.org/donate. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter at AMI Monetary or on our website